Francen has traveled to over 100 nations in his quest for souls. Millions of people have said yes to Jesus in his massive gospel crusades. He has written more than 40 books, and he has over 3 million copies of his books in print. On today's episode of the Evangelism Podcast, you will be inspired as you hear the stories of the lessons Mike Francen has learned and the victories he has seen as he has traveled around the world telling people about Jesus.
Jesus said, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel."
Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved.
Welcome to the Evangelism Podcast with Dr. Daniel King, where Daniel interviews full-time evangelists, pastors, missionaries, and normal everyday Christians to discover how they share their faith, their powerful testimonies, and amazing stories that will inspire you to reach people with the good news. And now, here's your host, missionary and evangelist, Daniel King.
Welcome to the Evangelism Podcast. I'm Daniel King. I'm excited about telling people about Jesus. Today I have a very special guest with me, Dr. Mike Francen. Thank you for being on the Evangelism Podcast.
Daniel, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you, especially you said, hey, we're going to talk about evangelism. I thought, I'm there. I don't need to pray about nothing.
Well, I want to begin by just saying thank you to you for your ministry. You have now gone to over 100 nations. You've seen over 13 million people that you have led to Jesus, and you are one of the evangelists who inspired me so greatly when I was young. I always knew I was called to be an evangelist, but I didn't know how to be an evangelist. And so you did a conference here in Tulsa, Oklahoma called the Regions Beyond Conference. You had Reinhard Bonnke, T.L. Osborne, and you were speaking at this conference, and man, that conference just lit a fire into me. And ever since, I've been busy traveling and preaching the world. So thank you for your heart for evangelism.
Well, thank you for picking up the inspiration, the information, and just taking it to the nations. So thank you. You can present a lot of things to a lot of people, but a lot of people don't do anything. I tip my hat to you, my friend, because you're out there doing the stuff.
Well, let's start at the beginning. How did you first go to the mission field? I remember that you had met the great Nigerian evangelist, Dr. Benson Idahosa, and he helped to inspire you to start doing evangelism.
Yeah, I wasn't raised in a Christian home, never went to church. My parents, nobody was saved in my family. And basketball, I'm in sports, football, basketball, track, tennis, anything that there was, I played it. But basketball was my God. And I was playing college basketball up in Minnesota and wasn't living for God. And another story for another time how I got there. But after that first season, I accepted Jesus. And somebody gave me one of T.L. Osborne's books, Soul Winning, Out Where the Sinners Are. And when I opened that book, I saw the pictures of these mass crusades all over the world. And God birthed the vision in me that this is what I had to do. This was my lot in life. This is my purpose, was to go to the nations. Now, I was raised on a farm, Bradford, Minnesota, population 97. Wasn't raised in a church home, never went to church, never read a Bible. And I claimed I was an atheist. I told people basketball was my God. But now I get saved, and I see this book, and all of a sudden now I've got to go to the nations. But I didn't know how to get from where I was. We can never let the where we are become the who you are. Where you are right now is not who you are. And where I was, just making $25 a week as the missions director of a church. Didn't have any missions, but I was a director of it, living in the boiler room, the basement of the church. And now I get this letter one day from a pastor. I didn't know him, don't know he knew me. I mean, I'm just, barely 20 years old. And I get this letter saying there's a man by the name of Benson Idahosa. He's coming from Nigeria. They said he's a Billy Graham of Africa. And I knew who Billy Graham was at that time, but I'd never heard of Idahosa. And so would you pick him up? He's going to be here for 2 weeks of meetings. And Daniel, the first day I went to pick him up, 15 minutes after I met him, he said, I want you to come and stay with me in my home for 3 months in Nigeria. He said, you get your ticket there. And he said, you're going to be my guest. And he wanted me there in 6 weeks. Daniel, I was making $25 a week. I knew if I saved all my money in 6 weeks, it wasn't going to be enough to get the $1,600 airplane ticket I had. I didn't know how to get from where I was to the place God wanted me to be. And a lot of people watching this like, God, how do I get to that place? One day you may get a letter. And so anyways, the last day we're there. Idahosa stands up and he said, "Son, stand up." He said, "This is my son in the ministry. He's very well in his body, but very sick in his finances." He said, "He's going to come and live with me in my home for 3 months." And he turned this pastor on the stage and he said, "And you're buying his airplane ticket." And he did. And 6 weeks later, I was there and didn't know this when I got there, but TL and Daisy Osborne were there dedicating his new 25,000-seat Miracle Center Cathedral. And that's where I met TL and Daisy Osborne, and TL just took me in. That's why I moved to Tulsa, because he gave me office space in his building. But that's how it all started. And after I was there for those 3 months, and I saw TL and Daisy Osborne there the first week, and then Jerry Savelle came and did a crusade with them, and Rick Shelton came and did a crusade with them, and saw these mass crusades, 50, 75, 100,000 people. And at the end of that 3 months, I said, "Benson," I said, "why 15 minutes after you met me, did you invite me to come here?" He said, "I know what God told me about your life. You need to learn how to do big crusades." I said, "What am I supposed to do now?" He said, "Son, go thou and do likewise." So this was in the early 80s. In December, January, I got on an airplane, went to the Philippines, started doing my first crusade, and now I've been doing it for 45 years. And
Tell me about that first crusade. I remember reading the story in one of your books, and you're a prolific writer. You've written a bunch of different books. But I remember the story that Benson Idahosa very boldly proclaimed, the blind will see, the lame will walk, the deaf will hear. And so you took that and ran with it.
Well, he said, "Son, go down and do likewise." And that's how he advertised, "Bring the blind, the deaf, and cripples, and God will heal them." And so I didn't, my first crusade in the Philippines, I actually went there for 6 weeks, did 3 crusades. But I got on the airplane, I had $120 in my pocket. I had no partners, I had no bank account, I had no nothing. I had $120. Went and met with a handful of pastors in the city, never had a crusade. And there was 9 pastors. They got together. And my pastor in the church I was working with, they said, "Mike, you're too young, you have no experience, you cannot go." So I went anyways. And I get there and meet these pastors. I left that meeting, they took a vote. I was too young, had no experience, so I couldn't go. So I made up these tiny little posters, "Bring them blind, the deaf, and the cripples, and God will heal them." And there wasn't many of them. And I made 2 15-second radio spots. "Bring the blind, the deaf, and the cripples, and Jesus is going to heal them." And that's all I had was to afford 2 15-second spots. I got there the first night, Daniel. I never seen so many sick people in all my life. And I said, "My God," I went behind this. I said, "My God, what have I done? I'm too young. I have no experience. I cannot do this." And then a thought came to me. I didn't come in the name of a church. I didn't come in the name of religion. I didn't come in the name of Mike Francen. I came in the name of Jesus Christ. And when that thought came, a boldness came. And I went up and I took the microphone. I preached like I'd done it 1,000 times before. Preached one of Idahosa's messages. God will single you out. Shared those testimonies he shared like they were mine. I figured they're God's, so it's community property. And just went out and the blind and the deaf and the cripples. And in that very first crusade, we saw 4,000 people accept Christ. And now we've done almost 400 crusades around the world, seen a little over 18 million people come to Christ, and just been out there doing the stuff just like you are.
Well, I remember I wanted to learn how to do crusades. So I went to your office, which was here in Tulsa, and asked you if I could come to a crusade. And you invited me to an event that you were doing down in Santa Ana, El Salvador. Mm-hmm. And so I went 2 weeks early because I want to learn how to do crusades. And your crusade director took me around the neighborhood, showed me how to make a glue pot and put glue up on a telephone pole and put a poster up on it, and how to go talk to pastors and everything. And I remember that crusade in Santa Ana. I mean, it was a football field that was completely packed full of people, as many people as you could put on a football field on that football field.
Yeah, that was a beautiful. I think I've done 5 crusades in El Salvador, and the one I had just prior to that was in San Salvador, El Salvador. And that crusade, we rented 3,722 buses. So we had almost 4,000 buses we'd rented. People say, "Oh, that's cool." This is logistics. Where do you park that many buses? How do you get those people back on those buses? And so, anyways, when we went there, a great story about that. When we went there, the president of El Salvador came the last day. So this is the biggest meeting of any kind in the history of Latin America. And so when I went back to Santa Ana, which you were there, and I went back there, and the president sent the chief of police over all El Salvador was there with us. And after that crusade was over, and in that one in San Salvador, we had 8 soccer fields side by side, packed to overflowing. So you saw the one we had 1 soccer field. This one was 8 of them. We had hundreds of thousands of people there, but The last, you may have not even heard this. I didn't hear it till after, but the last night after the crusade, we had a special dinner for some of the pastors and their spouses. I think there's about 100 of them there. And the chief of police that the president assigned to come with me, he said, Mike, I got to tell you what just happened. I said, tell me. He said, as you left and team left, the crusade's over. The miracles were many that week. And he said, there was a man there laying on the ground, beating the ground, cursing God. I mean, we're done. We've left. I mean, there's still thousands of people that are kind of dispersing. And he said, this man's beating the ground, cursing God. And he said, stand up. He said, I cannot stand. He said, two of his officers went and picked him up. He said, how can you curse God after this week of miracles we've just seen? He said he was 50 years old. He said, when I was 10 years old, I fell in a hole and it broke my spine. He said, for 40 years, my legs have been dead. He said, I prayed, God, if you're real, I want somebody to give me a wheelchair. He said, I see these empty wheelchairs on the stage of people that were healed. He said, God, if you're real, give me an empty wheelchair. And he said, everybody's left. He said, I didn't get a wheelchair. And so the chief of police is telling me, he said, as he's telling me the story, he said, all of a sudden his body started shaking. And he said, the officers let him go and he was standing. All of a sudden started walking. He wanted a wheelchair. God gave him a new set of legs. For the first time in 40 years, he stood and walked, and he fell on the ground and started praising God. And so it's just doing this stuff. It's bringing the good news of who Jesus is, not what he's going to do. It's what he's already done. And, it's just Daniel coming into your studio here and looking at your office and all the amazing posters and pictures you have all over the wall of what you've been doing for the last, how many years of ministry for you?
Yeah, I went to that Santa Ana Crusade probably about 25 years ago, and I've been doing evangelism ever since.
Beautiful. Yeah,
But what it did is seeing all those people, it planted a seed in my heart to believe that God could do the same through my ministry.
And that's what when I went with Ida Hosa and I saw TL and Jerry Savelle and these crusades, that planted a seed in me. And so we just seed people with it. TL seeded me with it. I've seeded you with it. You've seeded others people, and people just run out and do it. Nike nailed it. Just do it. just do it.
Well, 2/3 of God's name is go, and so you just got to go and do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned Dr. T.L. Osborne. You did many crusades where you and Dr. Osborne shared the platform together, and you learned so much from him. What were some of the key things that you learned from the ministry of T.L. Osborne?
Oh, wow. In fact, I've got a book I've written called T.L. Osborne Remembered, where it's about 280, 300 pages of things that I've learned from T.L. So many things. One of the things that I learned from T.L., see, God never called us to change the world. He told us to love the world. If I think I've got to change you, that means I got to find fault with you because you got to change. But if I go in and love you, if I go in and love the world, then God will change them. One of the things that really stands out about TL, and I preach at his crusades, he preached at my crusades. I spent many, many afternoons and evenings with him in his home or him in my home. And one of the things about TL is his legacy of love. I had him come and speak 2 of the 5 nights of the crusade I did in the Philippines. And this is one of the things that really struck my crusade directors, because he was in his 80s at that time. He wasn't incredible by any means. He was strong, maybe mid-70s, 80 years old. And there was one night after the crusade, and you know what it's like. Everybody wants to touch you. And he stepped off the stage. We're starting to get in the car. And so the car's being surrounded, and they're shaking the car. Everybody wants to touch. And TL said, stop. So he stopped the car because he saw this little crippled boy in front of the car. He's about to get run over, and TL stopped the car. He got out in the middle of that crowd. And my crusade directors are freaking out. It's like, God, how are we going to control this crowd now? He went out there, and he just went and prayed for this boy. And it was a waterhead baby. And this baby's maybe 2.5 years old. Baby's got this huge head. Legs are crippled, never walked or never moved its legs in its life. And TL just went and prayed, and I saw that. Here's a man, 75, 80 years old, knows he's going to get mobbed by the people. My crusaders are like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? It was his compassion for people, his love for people, his heart to help the hurting, to lift those that are beaten down by religion. And TL always said, religion is superstition. Religion is man's ideas of what God is like. Religion puts burdens on people and then refuses to help them bear those burdens. And so TL goes down there. And so the next day, I'm up there preaching and just praying, ask those that were healed to testify. that boy that TL got out of the car, stopped in the middle of everything, out of a compassion of love. He went out and stopped the car. That baby's head shrank to half its size. That baby held my fingers and took its first steps for the first time in its life because TL was moved with a compassion, with a heart of love. Even though the ministry was finished for the night, we thought the crusade was over, the testimonies are done, amazing things happen. His compassion and his heart of love for people just forced one more prayer.
The motto of your ministry has been our vision, the world, our passion, souls. Talk to me some, did I say that right?
Absolutely.
Talk to me some about how your vision is for the whole world. I mean, you've always been a huge visionary, thinking about how do we win the whole world to Jesus. And then talk about having a passion for souls.
Before I got saved, I saw this picture. It was like a sunset, and there was a caption underneath that meant nothing to me. I didn't understand it. I thought, well, it's nice, but it said, the greatest use in life is to spend it on something that will outlast it. I thought, that doesn't make any sense, but it's a pretty sunset picture. The week I got saved, I saw that poster again. It made total sense. The greatest use in life is to spend it on something that will outlast it. The only thing that's going to outlast this life is eternity. I've got to take my life, and God, immediately put this heart for souls. I thank God, and I say this with a reason, I thank God I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I didn't learn religion. I didn't have to unlearn anything. My Bible school was what I saw T.L. Osborne do and Reinhard Bonnke do and Benson-Ita Hossa do. You just believe God and do it, and it happens. And so our vision always been to the nation. It's been to the unreached peoples. A lot of people go to the same place everyone else has gone. That's never been my heart. It's never been my vision. I want to go to places where Christ is not named. And today, the church eagerly awaits Christ's second coming, when the vast majority of the world has not even yet heard about his first coming. His last command should be our first concern. And so these things, and realizing who Jesus was, and he came to seek and to save, and that's just been in me from day one. I just had to be. And so when I started working with that church up in Minnesota, they made the director of evangelism. They didn't have any missions, and so I built a puppet stage. Went out to the parks, just did puppet evangelism for the kids. Went door to door. I just did everything I knew. But see, that's where I was, but that's not who I was. Put your hand to do whatever you can right now, and God will take you from where you are and make you the who you've actually been created to be. So, and the nations of the world, and I've spoken hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 churches here in the U.S. I just spoke at an awesome church here a couple of days ago, and I've spoken in a lot of churches and conferences, and here in Australia and Canada and Europe and things. But the nations that have yet to hear, the cities that have yet to hear, that's my heart. Oswald J. Smith coined the classic phrase, why should anybody hear the gospel twice before everyone has had a chance to hear it once? Those words ring. It's just really his passion for souls that really guides my efforts.
T.L. Osborne told you to always put pictures in every book that you write. And that's one of the things that really inspired me. I remember one time you were at a conference and you had a table there, and when you left and took down the table, you just left all your books out on the table for anyone to come and take, and you were seeding them into people's lives. So I went and grabbed a copy of every single book that was on the table. And I remember flipping through that book and looking at the pictures of the Crusades, the pastors' conferences, the train track to glory, renting ships to go down the Amazon River. And I remember just seeing these pictures of the amazing things that God has done. And now you come over here to my house and you saw on my wall, I've got my victory wall.
Beautiful. All
the pictures of the great Crusades that God has done. And what people don't understand when they look at those pictures, sometimes I show people pictures and they think it's just ego, like, look, I got to preach in front of a big crowd. But what people don't understand is that every single one of those pictures represents a miracle where you are raising the money in order to do the crusade. You have to go with blood, sweat, and tears, often fighting government forces or political things or religious spirits to make that crusade come to pass. And so you've seen so many victories around the world, and you have so many pictures. What can you do to encourage evangelists that the price is worth paying in order to see people come to Jesus?
One thing that comes to mind, many things, flood my mind and my psyche in that question. When I was I won't say where, but I was doing a crusade in Africa, and a very prominent minister came and did a conference in the morning. And I was talking to him. He was, we were talking about different people, and he was talking about T.L. Osborne. He said, "Oh, Tommy Lee." He said, "I've told Tommy Lee that," talking about T.L. Osborne, he said, "I told Tommy Lee he's a fool. He gives these vehicles to these pastors, and they use them as buses, or they sell them, they pocket the money." He said, "He's just a fool." And so I thought, well, so I went back, and when I got home, I went to T.L.'s home, and I mentioned that to him. He said, "You know what, Mike?" He said, "I've heard of that happening a couple of times." And in fact, I wrote this in one of the chapters in my book. T.L. Osborne remembered. T.L. said, "Mike, what's the option?" He said, "The option is to do nothing, and that's not an option." And I thought, wow, what's the option? The option is do nothing. The option is don't give anything. The option is not to send out a book. Maybe they sell the book. Like I've seen some of my books. None of my books I sell for more than $20. I've seen some of my used books on Amazon, on different places for $69. I thought, my God, they're getting 4 times. I've given away 3 million of my books around the world. I want to see people, and that's what you're doing. That's why I tip my hat to you. Dan, you've taken. I did what I saw T.L. Osborne doing because it worked. You're doing what you saw me doing, what you saw T.L. doing, and it's working. And it's like we don't have to do anything new. And when we rented the trains and did a tour across India, did it across Thailand, took boats up the Amazon River. I chartered 3 727s, invaded Honduras, took 400 some believers. They shut down the international airport. Why do you do those things? I want to grab the attention of a nation. I want people to know that we are there. And when we chartered those 3 planes and went into Honduras, Vice President, First Lady met us there. 400 people from America came with us. They closed the city down for us. We were like the presidents. And in that stadium, we filled that stadium to overflowing. And they said there was 4 times more people outside the stadium that couldn't get in. And I heard this years afterwards, that when the pastors went back the next day, they had to take down the stage. They said there was 32 empty wheelchairs and 122 sets of crutches left on the stage that people were. We never even heard their testimonies. But what drives us is compassion for people. People are hurting. People are bound with religion. And that's why we got to go, because religion doesn't give them the offers. The politicians don't have an answer. We have it. We have it.
Amen. What are some of the greatest victories that you've seen and experienced?
Wow. You talk about some of the opposition. We've had political opposition of any kind, every kind you can imagine. I've had, I don't know how many times people have come to kill me. And I'm a nice guy. I don't know why people want to kill me. All over the world, people want to kill me. And we were doing a crusade in Nizamabad. It's it's a Hindu stronghold with the Naxalites. The Naxalites are the radical sect of the Hindus. And we went there. The day before we got there, they beheaded 6 people. And it was on the newspaper, front page, these 6 bodies and 6 heads. And so the Naxalites came to my team, and they said, "Listen, if Mike Francen preaches..."
So they're looking for you.
Oh, no, they're looking. No, because we got posters all over. They beat up our guys that are putting up our posters, and they said, "Mike Francen and preaches tonight, we will kill him." Well, they just beheaded 6 people. And so I get there that night, and we probably, for, how crusades, they start out small. We start out maybe 30, 40,000 the first night. And so I get there, and I can't find my interpreter. I says, "Where's Prabhakar Rao?" And they said, "He's under the stage." And I said, "Prabhakar, what are you doing?" He said, "The Naxalite said that if I interpret, they're going to cut my legs off." Well, they just cut off 6 heads of the people the day before we got there. And I said, "Get up here." Usually we've got 50, 75, 100 pastors on the stage. There was nobody on the stage that night.
None of the pastors wanted to sit up there.
No. And so we had 38 Naxalites around the stage with AK-47s. They said, "You preach, we will kill you." And when you hear of churches being bombed or trains being burned, it's the Naxalites. And so I get there the first night, and I said, "Well, this is my last message. It's going to be a good one." And that night, there was 12, 13, 14, 15 little boys and girls that had polio, never walked or stood a day in their lives. One after the other got up walking. Those 38 people that came with their AK-47s, they laid down their guns, raised their hands to Jesus. I was doing another crusade up in Nizamabad. No, not Nizamabad. I'll think of the name. So nobody had ever crusaded there before. 4 years before we got there, American Evangelist went there. The day he arrived, they put him in jail and deported him. And so we get there the first night. They tried to get our permits pulled, and so the next lights. And so they went to the chief of police. They said, I didn't issue the permits. I can't pull the permits. They went to the mayor. I didn't issue the permits. I can't pull the permits. And so we got through the first night. And the first night, I mean, amazing. The frog boy got healed. This boy had calluses on the tops of his knees and feet and arms, just dragging his body like a frog. And had polio as a baby, got healed, miracle after miracle. So the next day, because they wouldn't pull our permits, they brought charges against me. I was in violation of the Magical Remedies Act. And so we had to go to court every day, all morning, all day, because I was in violation of the Magical Remedies Act because of the miracles. And they wouldn't pull our permits. And so now the crowd's getting huge. And so on that last day, they took out full-page ads in the newspaper for riots in the streets against me and against the crusade, and that I was to be stoned that night. I'm a nice guy. Now they want to come and stone me. And so we get over there. The first night, of course, there's nobody on the stage again. And not only bring charges against me, but they also brought charges against the chief of police, which was a beautiful thing, because when he found that out and when he saw the ads and they were calling for me to be stoned, he sent hundreds of his police officers there. That night, a mob came, over 200 had stones in hand. They came and arrested him, went on. I mean, they were just, less than 100 yards away from stoning me, and now they're being arrested. And so we've seen countless victories like that all over the world. But if you don't have opposition, you're not doing something right. You do something right, do something God's way, opposition is going to come. We can't worry about the devil. He's just doing his job. We do our job, he becomes irrelevant.
I learned a lot in my early years from talking to you. You had me to your office several times and were very gracious, spent a lot of time with me, encouraging me, even though I was young and didn't know anything back then. What advice would you give to a young evangelist who has a heart for evangelism and wants to do something big for God?
First of all, and this is one of the things I tell people, I don't care about how old you are chronologically, but those young in ministry just started. You may be in your teens, you may be in your 50s, you may be 80 years old. If you get started, one of the things I see today, which is, it's sad, so many of these guys today, they're trying to be somebody. They want to be somebody. They want to make a name. When I started out, I wasn't trying to be anybody. I was just trying to serve God. I remember the first Crusades. I was sleeping in an abandoned home, no furniture. I slept on a shipping crate, and no electricity, no water, no nothing. Abandoned home. I had rats running over the top of me all night long. And so one of the greatest things I would say, find somebody that is doing or has done what you want to do, what's in your heart to do. Because I did this with T.L. Osborne. And you start praying for them. You start reading everything that they've written. You start listening to everything that they've spoken. You start praying for them on a regular basis. You start sowing seed into their lives. That's what I do. TL told me for a long time, I was his largest monthly supporter. And TL said every month, he said, Mike, you're doing more than I've ever done. You keep it. No. I would tell somebody that wants to do, find somebody who's doing or has done what you want to do. You start praying for them, start gleaning all you can. Maybe God will open the door for you to become friends with them. Maybe you'll never meet them, but you start sowing into them. You start praying for them. You start following them. You start doing everything you can because God will use that. And I could go into a lot of things. When I brought Teal and Daisy to India and I paid for all that to come over, how God exploded our finances through those things. That would be one of the best things I could tell.
Tell us about it.
I know we're going over our minutes here, but
it's good.
But this is good stuff because this was a real turning point in my ministry, Daniel. Years ago, I was in my early 30s, I guess, and TL and Daisy hadn't been to India in 30 years, and so I went over to TL's home and I said, I want to bring you and Daisy to India, and I said, I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to set it up. I said it's going to be one of your great crusades you've ever done. And so I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, all right, I'm going to set the budget at that time, $50,000. It could have been 50 million at that time for me because that was way stretching my faith. And I still had 8 or 9 of my own crusades I was doing that year. I said, TL, I'm going to fly you and Daisy over. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to fly them over business class. So I talked to my travel agent back when they still had that back in the day. And I said, how much is a business class 2 tickets? And he said, it's $7,500. I thought, wow, that's a big chunk. And so I thought, we'll do a 5-day crusade. And so I thought, I'm going to put them up in a suite at the nicest hotel in Hyderabad, India, the Oberoi Hotel. And I'm going to pay for that for a week. And then I've got myself and a few of my team people that We got to pay for this hotel, and then the 5-day crusade. So $50,000, we can do it right. I mean, this is back around.
Back when 50,000 was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. It was huge money to me. And so then I heard TL. He wasn't saying it to me, but I heard him telling somebody. He says, "Yeah, after all these years of ministry," he said, "we only fly first class." I thought, "Oh no, I budgeted business class." Called my travel agent. "How much is the difference between first class and 2 business class tickets?" He said, "Well, 2 business class is $7,500. 2 first class is $15,000. I thought, oh, I start twitching. It's like, oh Jesus, I was stretching my faith at that. And then TL said, "Mike," he said, "if we're going to go all that way," he said, "let's not do 5 days. Let's do 10 days. I thought, okay. And he said, "I'll help pay for it." I said, "No." I said, "I'm going to pay for it." And I'm sitting there thinking, I didn't know I was going to raise 50. Now we're going to 60. Now we're going to 70,000. And TL said, "Mike," he said, "if we're going to do that," he said, "let's do a pastor's conference, a fire conference, and a women's conference." I thought, okay, we'll do a 1-day pastor's conference on Saturday, do a women's conference on Sunday afternoon. He said, "No, we'll do that after the 10-day crusade." So now we've extended the hotel from 1 week to 2 weeks. Now he said, "No, we'll do the women's conference the week following that. We'll do the pastor's conference the week following that." I thought, dear God, now we're not in the hotel for a week. Now we're in there for a month. And so now our budget goes to 80,000, 90,000, 100,000. I'm sitting, and TL said, "I'll help pay for it." I said, no, it's okay. I didn't know I was going to get 50. And then TL said, "I don't like to do a conference like that unless we're going to give away books." He said, "Let's give away 100,000 books." He said, "I'll pay for it." I said, "No, I'll pay for it." I had no idea. Now we're at 125, 130,000. Then a month before the meeting, we had to put there was a government building. I had to put $5,000 down on that building for the women's conference. A month before the meeting, it burns to the ground. We didn't get our $5,000 back. Now I got to get a new venue. Now the budget's at $137,000. I didn't know I was going to get 50. I thought that was beyond my fate. TL kept saying, "I'll help pay up." I said, "No, TL, I'm going to take care of this." Daniel, to this day, I don't even know where the money came from. I didn't let TL put in $1. He wanted to. The money came in supernaturally. When I left India, that crusade was totally paid for 100%. We paid for all of it. I had $7,000 in my pocket. I got back here to Tulsa. I bought me a Yamaha Virago motorcycle, and I just cruised for a week because like I see your pictures out there, and I'm sitting there thinking, I know what kind of stress went in that. I know what kind of pressure went in that. I know what kind of finance went in that. I know what kind of battle. I know what kind of wars that. Mm-hmm. So I see those things because I've lived this for 45 years. But when I got back from that, God supernaturally brought the money in, and our finances exploded after that. I mean, we went from a few $100,000 a year to $2-3 million a year, $4 million a year, $5 million a year. I mean, and it was that thing catalyst because I decided, and so that's why I say, find somebody who's done what you want to do. You start sowing into them. You start praying for them. You start reading everything they've got. You start picking up the little things. And so that was a huge turning point in our ministry. And every January I'd sit down with our staff and I'd say, "How much is in the bank?" And whatever was in there could have been 1,000, could have been 100,000. I said, "We're giving it all away. We're starting out with seeding." But find someone who's doing it. Seed them. Pray for them every day. Read their stuff. Glean from, and you're going to watch and see what God does.
A seed has great power, and it will always bring in a harvest. And so you have seeded your work, your ministry all over the world, and to this day you continue to do crusades, to preach the gospel. You can never get an evangelist to retire. They just keep going because it's a calling that comes from God.
Yeah, I mean, this is not what we do. It's who we are. How do you stop being who you are? There's no retirement. I'm going to be who I am till the day I die. And if I'm 94 years old, which I believe I'm going to live to, I don't know why I believe that. I can't say God told me. I just think that. Maybe it's 84, maybe it's 104. I don't know. It doesn't matter. To the day I die, I'm going to live and breathe this. And evangelism, and it's not who I am. It's not what I do. It's who I am. Can't stop being that.
And so if you are listening and you would like to help Dr. Mike Francen with his next crusade, he told me he's going to Puerto Rico soon, or if you want to invite him to come to your church, or you want to get hold of one of the books that he's written, what is the best website to find out some information about you?
Just go to MikeFrancen.com. This is Mike Francen, is Francen, MikeFrancen.com. You'll see all kinds of, there's lots of videos on there, documentary films, there are lots of things on there, so you can keep up with us that way. And I want to say this, Daniel, I love what you're doing. I love who you are, because who you are, it's expressed by what you're doing. It's hanging on the walls outside of this studio. And everybody that's watching this that will sow a seed into your ministry, I'm going to give you my book in a digital format. It's called Dream Big. I'm going to give that to you, and anyone who will write in that's listening, watching this right now, and you say, Daniel, I want Mike's book. I'm sending a seed. I don't care how big, if it's $5 or $500,000, whatever you send. Danny's going to give you my free book, Dream Big. I'm going to send that to you digital. So, and you're going to say, hey, listen, I watch Mike and you on your podcast. I'm sending. Here's my offering, and Daniel will make sure that you get a Dream Big.
Well, that is extremely generous of you, Dr. Mike. Thank you so much for your inspiration. Thank you for your example. And thank you for sharing with us today on the Evangelism Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Daniel, it's been my honor. And again, I tip my hat to you. I salute you. And everybody who's watching, God's big enough to honor your wisdom and your mistakes. I'd rather err on the side of trying to do something for God than err on the side of sitting there waiting on God. So, Daniel, I appreciate you, my friend. I honor you.
Thank you.
Are you called by God to be an evangelist? Do you want to lead millions of people to Jesus? Do you desire to be trained in the practical side of building a ministry? Then check out the Daniel King School of Evangelism. Learn how to be an effective evangelist from Dr. Daniel King's 20-plus years of experience. Daniel King has done crusades all over the world in over 70 nations and has seen over 2 million people give their lives to Jesus. But it wasn't easy. There was no crusade school. So Daniel traveled the world, learning from and observing top evangelists, noticing how they successfully won souls for Christ. Now, he wants to share decades of knowledge and experience with you. Topics of the Daniel King School of Evangelism include what is an evangelist, how to be a master soul winner, how to give an altar call, how to organize a crusade, how to raise money for your ministry, and much more. If you want to be an evangelist but don't know where to start, the Daniel King School of Evangelism is for you. Enroll today in the School of Evangelism by going to danielkingministries.com/evangelism.
Thanks so much for listening today. I am excited about telling people about Jesus, and I want to invite you to be a part of helping us to rescue people from hell and take them with us to heaven. There's 2 things you can do to help. First of all, can you go find the Evangelism Podcast on Apple iTunes and leave us a positive review? By giving a review, you will help other people find these valuable resources about sharing our faith. And second, would you become a financial partner with King Ministries? Every single dollar that people give us enables us to lead at least one person to Jesus. And so that means for only $1, you can help start a party in heaven. And so today I want to invite you to become a monthly partner. You can start out for just $1, but if God puts it on your heart to do more, of course you can do more. But please go to kingministries.com and become a monthly partner with us today to help us to lead more people to Jesus. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
For more information about how to share your faith or to financially support our worldwide evangelistic outreaches, visit kingministries.com. Again, that's kingministries.com.